Welcome to the Blue Cafe. We offer stories of infidelity, betrayal, and redemption. Please like and subscribe. Cheers. Now, on to today's story. Are Japanese offended when asked how do you say this? My cousin writes stories, fanfics. She's a bigger nerd than I am. Recently she's been writing a story and she's had some questions as one of her characters is from a fictional culture she has obviously based on Japanese. In reading her stuff, I caught some things that I just know are wrong from osmosis, and I asked her if she checked with a Japanese person or a speaker about it. She said she had once or twice when she was younger and they were absolutely offended by her interests and essentially told her, "You've got goggle, look it up." This kind of soured her from asking. I told her to take it to Reddit, but she won't. She even got very upset with me asking her to do it, finally saying it was a terrible experience that made her feel stupid and ignorant for even asking. I resolved to come ask some questions for her, cause I'm not sensitive, but then I wondered if it is something culturally wrong with asking those kinds of questions. I know a good portion of Japanese are weirded out by weeaboos and otakus in America and their odd interest in the culture. But I would think that you'd want them to get it right. But her reaction was so visceral, so now I'm kind of concerned too. So I'm asking if Japanese folks really have a big problem with this. If someone is willing to answer her questions, I will ask them in the comments. But for now I'm more concerned with whether or not it's right to ask. No, there is nothing culturally wrong with asking those types of questions. However, Japanese culture can be really confusing, even for Japanese themselves. Like, for instance, I don't know a thing about tea ceremonies, or the history behind haikus, so if I were asked a question about those topics I would probably say Google it, lol. I know a good portion of Japanese kind of are weirded out by weeaboos and otakus in America and their odd interest in the culture. This is also not the case. In fact, we often get excited when we see our culture/technology being accepted by foreigners, Westerner complex aka Gaijin complex, so don't worry too much about that either, emo. Actually, now I'm curious, what is the Japanese for Google it? As a learner I'd probably say because I think it would get my point across, but what would a Japanese person say to a friend? Good guess. The Japanese slang for search on Google is. This page has all other conjugations if you're interested. https://nihongamaster.com/japanese/dictionary/word/95915/gaguru. I would recommend finding 1 or 2 people to assist with her writing the whole way. Not ask random questions on social media here and there. There's an app called HelloTalk which I recommend. When creating your profile you choose which language you want to learn, and the news feed will only show posts from people from that language, and they will only see you if English is what they chose to learn. This is a really friendly environment because the whole point is to learn from each other. I'm certain she will find someone who will be an ongoing contact for answering questions about the culture. When asked about Japanese culture, Japanese people will try their best to answer as best they can. The first possibility of being rejected is if it is a technical question in a maniacal field and it is impossible to answer. The second thing that comes to mind is if the questioner's attitude is rude, you may not want to answer. If none of those apply, then everyone will try to answer in kind. Did she really ask the question? Is it possible that she doesn't want to change the setting of her work? English isn't my first language, and when people ask me how to pronounce this word or that word, if I see they genuinely want to know, I just say it with a smile and encourage them to repeat until they get it right. I don't get why some people would get offended just because someone asked them how to pronounce words right. Could it be a cultural thing? Don't pay me for your porn. Okay, I'm about to end this man's entire world. I guess I'll begin with an introduction and an explanation. I'm an artist. I cut my teeth as an intern at a graphic design firm in Chicago, before working for a gaming studio. then spending my time working as an inker for a couple of small indie comics, before realizing I made more money on my own projects and personal commissions. I get commissioned to draw all kinds of things. I have a list of what I will and won't draw, and early in my career started raising my prices stupidly high for things I didn't want to draw. Charging beyond my skill level for things I found distasteful, but would draw. Specifically, I had been uncomfortable drawing things with real people. So I made a rule about video calls and consent and stuff, as well as folks signing things. Anything to deter these kinds of commissions. I won't beat around the bush, but folks will sometimes pay a great sum for me to draw them, an actually photorealistic version of them, doing the naughty in many ways with others. Celebrities and characters and all that. Characters are fine for me. Whatever floats your boat if you're willing to pay me that stupid high fee. But real people I'm uncomfortable with. Call me weird, but I'm less bothered if it's a celebrity, than if you send me the picture of some random person. I've run all kinds of thoughts in my head on the matter and felt like such art with so-called real people would just go horribly wrong if I didn't have the consent of both people. Normally all of this, plus the price, is enough to deter people from asking me for this. But I get enough of these in a year that I make more off of them than some folks make on 20+ an hour full-time jobs. Yes, people are thirsty. I'm sorry if that was long, it needed to be known what exactly we were dealing with. 2 years ago a client approached me about making a few comics, grayscale, of a sexual nature with him and his boyfriend. Now a comic cost far more than a single image. Comics are a lot of little images and require time and direction. Even just grayscale, that's about $450 to $700 a page depending on the level of detail. And he wants details. Cars, buildings, places. Stuff. He's got an entire concept package, photos, excellent references, more pictures of himself and his partner and anatomy than I cared to have. And was willing to pay $1,000 per page, 28 pages for the first comic, plus $550 for a full color cover. So, I calculated in my head and let him know I can get maybe 6 pages done a month. I'm not going to stop my regular commissions to work on this shit full time, but I need to FaceTime with him and his boyfriend and get all the consent stuff out of the way. They obliged and I went to work. It took me only 4 months to complete the project. When I was done, he bought another, and another, and another. So I've been working with him on this for about 2 years. Now that I am no longer with my design team, I can actually work faster. Now the content of these stories are exactly what you think. Random sexual situations, or so I thought. After a while I kind of figured out that they've got me drawing events that happened, but in a more interesting way. They've got this odd storyline going on with it about them being spies or whatnot. I'll admit the actual non-sexual story stuff is interesting. The guy is a far better writer than I, and whether or not I liked him, because I didn't, the boyfriend was cool, but the guy paying was a demanding pain in the ass. Which is funny to say for orientation reasons, but yeah, everything was cool until it wasn't. When you work with someone, especially someone who has paid you well and consistently, you become lax in certain areas. He would request changes and I would work and change and do things without charging him up front. He always paid, so I didn't think it was an issue. I would do concept art, sketch work, and storyboarding before getting paid, which normally I would never do, but like I said, he always paid when it was time to pay. So eventually he approached me about working on something with 2 other artists. This was about 4 months ago, an animation. 10 minutes of animation. I did the art, worked closely with the other 2 artists who had experienced animation. My cut of the job was about $9,800, as I was just laying the line work. He paid half up front, the other half he would pay when my sketch work was all done, before submitting the final work. This is where I broke a cardinal rule of my business. I finished everything before being paid. Big mistake. So the problem started when me and one of the other artists couldn't get in contact with the third. They were ignoring us. I started to get cryptic messages from the client, asking when the last time we spoke to his boyfriend, who usually is very helpful and vocal in the projects, but had been working closely with the other artist instead. Turns out, the other artist is local to the boyfriend, and those two have been having an affair. Having gone through my own infidelity issue, I at first felt for the guy. Then the full drama unfolded in front of me. As speaking with the third artist finally shed light on what was going on. Turns out, the client was sneaking around on his wife with his boyfriend. And every one of these comics was a retelling of the rendezvous they've had whenever he went to visit the boyfriend. The two work in some field that lets them travel a lot. The boyfriend found out about the wife and wanted to break up with the client over it, but the client said he was divorcing his wife and tell her he was gay. Which preceded this whole animation thing. Partway through, boyfriend found out that the client was still with wife, having found his real Facebook and all the pictures and stuff. He was just a little side piece. This caused him to get into a physical relationship with a third artist. And thus complete this weird little clusterfuck. I did not care at first. I only want to be paid. My job is done and I want to be paid. I'll let you gentlemen sort out your drama. But apparently no. Angry at boyfriend, client decides he's breaking up with boyfriend. Whatever, but then he refuses to finish paying for animation, which he apparently got for boyfriend. Which is when my not giving a crap went from nothing to, wait, what about my money? Client proceeds to ghost everyone involved. I can't get info from PayPal. His whole online identity is a lie, and at first boyfriend was ducking me cause he thought I was gonna demand he pay. I'm sorry that y'all have your little relationship drama, but I'm not giving away almost $5,000 of free work cause y'all still think it's high school. Somebody gonna pay me. The thing about being a freelancer is, I ain't got no boss. I don't go into a studio to work anymore. I chill in my nice big house, and play with my toys, listen to my tunes, and can do so in a robe if I so choose. So it ain't nothing for me to get up and go anywhere on a moment's notice. So I find out from Artist 2 where Artist 3 lives. I find out where Artist 3 lives, and it's up in Baltimore. That's not too far from where I'm at in Virginia. Between context clues, information I can gather, and other things, I managed to figure out where Artist 3 lives. I go pay his ass a visit. That worked out pretty well for me, because boyfriend is with him. I won't go into detail here, it wasn't what you think. They were both lovely people and were very helpful once I told them that my contract wasn't with them, so I'm not demanding they pay me for the debacle. Though I did admonish him for cheating. Boyfriend gave me the information on client, his true information. Dude was living a super secret gay life. And I thanked him. Armed with the info I had, I called the guy that day. He hemmed and hawed about it, and I told him he feels betrayed, but that ain't got nothing to do with me. Now, I don't actually understand what he going through, cause I'm not cheating on my wife and then mad that my AP cheating on me. But I been betrayed before, so I'm calling on that experience to find some common ground, cause I want to be paid. He is less than receptive. I'll spare you some of the colorful vernacular, but the argument devolved as he refused to pay to be reminded of that boy. Again, not my problem, pay me. He refused and hung up on me. Then blocked me. So the revenge. I decided that I was gonna end this man's world. You see, I record those damn FaceTime meetings with the same program I use to capture my art tutorials and stream on Picato. I got all his email, all his evidence, back and forths, all that. I can take him to court. But he in Pittsburgh, I ain't trying to spend all that time up there. So I gathered all that stuff together, thumb drive, written documents, very nice prints and bindings of previous comics that had been made. I have several copies. And I make 4 packages. I've been on Reddit since I was suspicious of my wife cheating on me. I had always thought of what I would do if I caught her and had evidence of her and her lover and all of that. I thought I would ruin her life. That's a whole nother story, but the idea of this villain has been in my head for a while. So to say there was already the inklings of a plan like this already floating in my head is an understatement. So I did what boyfriend had done, found his real Facebook, found out where he worked, found out where his wife worked, found out where his parents lived. They take all kinds of pictures in front of their house. Found out where he lives, goes to fitness, all that. There's all that information on his Facebook. So I contacted him via his Facebook from another dummy one I've created. I let him know all he got to do is pay me what I'm owed. My work is done. I should have been paid before this revelation, and I've always done good discreet work for him. I want only what I'm owed and he can handle everything else. He tells me he doesn't want it, that he never wants to see that guy again, and blah blah blah. I tell him to burn the stuff, delete it all for all I care, but he has to pay me. He starts cussing me out and I warn him that I would end him if he did not. I'm pretty sure a scathing review on Artist Beware isn't going to equal the damage I can inflict if he don't pay me. He tells me to F off, and so I decided it's been a minute since I went to Sharp Edge. Let's go to Pittsburgh. I wanted to warn the guy one more time, but I couldn't contact him. He'd made his Facebook private and any of the previous ways wasn't getting through. I decided to go to the Starbucks he was always tagged in the mornings and hoped he showed up at that time. He didn't, or I didn't see him. I wanted to confront him before I blew his life to hell, so I went to his place, and though I had the name slightly off, the doorman buzzed upstairs and he was to meet me down in the lobby. But it wasn't him that came down to the lobby, it was his wife. She was hostile to me at first, wanting to know who I was. I told her that I was an artist who had been commissioned to do some work for her husband, and that I was there to see him. She looked me up and down and told me I didn't look like an artist. I asked what she was expecting an artist to look like. And I'm sure a 6 feet 3 inches black dude who's gotten reasonably fit wasn't gonna be the answer. I smile and say that there are all kinds and try to tell her that I'm just there to speak to her husband. She asks why, and what he has bought, and I told her it's a private matter and I'm just here to be paid and to deliver it. She asks me a few more questions and asks me if I'm Unfettered Designs and Concepts. I say yeah, that's my business name. She then gets very curious about exactly what I draw and stuff, and what her husband has been getting with all that money. I tell her that according to the contract I can't really share that with anyone, and I'd feel more comfortable with talking to her husband first. But depending on what he says, I would be more than happy to show her. The lady turned out to be sharp as a tack, and surmises that I'm showing up in person because I haven't been paid. I told her yes. And she tells me that her husband hadn't really told her what the money was for, just a design project for stuff for his job. He had always requested money from her for it and she had always paid, but that he told her he needed a certain amount of money for it but only took half. When she asked about it a few weeks ago, he said that they were no longer doing the project. She then says that means he didn't pay me. I admitted that and told her I was here to get payment. She said that her husband doesn't pay for much, that it's her money, so technically it's her stuff, so I could just tell her and she would have her husband pay me. I told her that I couldn't do that, cited the contract. She then said, well, if he hasn't paid you, isn't he in breach of contract? Which, yeah, he was, but I wasn't going to let that excuse have me ruin this man prematurely. I was determined to give him a chance to not get wrecked, but his wife said the magic words. If he owes you the rest of that money, I'll pay it, but you have to show me what he's been spending all this money on. At that point, I think she suspected, but wasn't sure. I don't know how. I stammered and stuttered, but getting paid was why I was there, so I was like okay. She whips out her phone and asks me how her husband pays and I tell her PayPal. She asks me about a Cash App, and I don't have it. So she does a bank transfer. Instant right to my credit union. I reach into my bag and hand her one of the manila envelopes I have. I tell her that she might want some privacy before opening it. So she takes me by the arm, not letting me leave, and she insists I escort her to the seats off to the side. She sees the stuff and is not surprised at all by the fact that it's a comic. Or that it's sexual. Though she says, "Wow, so he's gay." She seems very calm. Calmer than I think she should. She doesn't give me the reaction that I thought she would. Turns out both her and her husband are into comics and art. He had gotten her something like this years ago, but apparently grew out of the phase, but somehow he hadn't. She immediately knew he was cheating on her, because apparently the comic he'd gotten her years ago was the same thing, a rendezvous between them made in comic form. She asked me all kinds of questions, and since my contract was fulfilled I told her everything. I even told her what I had planned to do had he not paid me. She thanked me, picked up her phone and transferred me $8,000 more. Everything that was in his allowance account. I asked her what for, and she said she wanted everything, the ones I had on me. The hard files I have on my computer. Any backups, anything I have. She wants everything. I whip out my laptop and start doing it. I ask her if she wants me to delete my files, cause I think she's bailing out her cheating husband. Maybe she wants all the evidence. Not my problem, I'm paid. But she says no. Just wants every little bit. So I give it to her. The privacy clause in my contract does not cover this, and technically the contract is void seeing as how the name on it isn't the guy's real name. So, yeah, screw it. I decided after that to meat and potatoes and found out it was closed, bummer, but ended my trip on a high note by getting some crab on my way back. I didn't write this when it happened cause I didn't know about the aftermath until now. I heard from the boyfriend that the wife is a dark-hearted soul. She sent copies to the man's family. Ex-boyfriend said they were ultra-conservative, his bosses, and a few others. Apparently she avoided a few of his friends. She basically ruined the man's job and got him cut off from his family. Ex-boyfriend said the client called him up quite a few times to beg him to take him back and complained about how his wife now has him super under thumb. The job thing was weird. Apparently there was something about the trips that got him fired, not the actual folder. Ex didn't explain it well, wasn't sure. I doubt they cloud fire him just because he had gay out of himself. Weirdest thing is that his wife didn't divorce him. She's just got him under thumb. Controls his money and everything, and the guy got nowhere to go. She basically used all the evidence to cut him off from all of his support. I'm not sure why he just doesn't divorce her and move on. She's already used the evidence, but there's apparently something else under the surface. So he lost his cushy job, access to his family, and now is under the thumb of a very controlling and apparently domineering woman who he's dependent on now for finance. I think that's more than I hoped for petty revenge, and the money ain't that bad too. And since technically none of the contracts were signed by his real name, I'm looking into selling the comics to a few sites I know that deal in that kind of content. Moral of the story isn't what you think. This is a warning tale to other artists. Always get paid before you put pen to tablet. Oh, I bet there's a prenup that protects her assets. If he divorces her, he gets nothing, but if she initiates the divorce she has to pay him. That's why she just ruins him and lets him suffer. Oh, that's just diabolical. And I love it. The true petty revenge. Oh, 100% this woman isn't controlling, she's exacting her revenge in a way that is legally advantageous to her. Duck this guy. I hope he's miserable, and I hope his wife is so rich that she doesn't work so they can sit together all day long and never run out of things to talk about, lol. This is great. I just imagine them sitting opposite each other on posh couches in some posh sitting room, her glaring at him over her coffee cup with a slight smirk and him awkward as hell and squirming. Same. He deserves it. I don't know this woman, but the ducking nerve of her husband to cheat and lie to her while she holds the purse. Duck no. Burn him, girl. I mean, she was rich enough to just give up like $16K on the spot, and to not overly question what must have been at least $50K through the whole thing. Yeah, well, I'm sure this woman is revisiting the decision to give him ducking anything. Legally in the US, if she's got a prenuptial, oh, and I know she does, bless, then she can pretty much do whatever she wants. She's got the moolah and he's broken the vows. I hope she burns his sorry ass to the ground. I mean, she's still controlling. If my partner cheated on me and my response was to make sure she was fired, ostracized from friends/family, and totally financially dependent upon me, so I could treat her however poorly I wanted, then I would 100% be an asshole. She's doing to him what men used to do to women in the past if they wanted a divorce, and it was ducked up back then too. From the looks of it and the speculation about the prenup, it looks like the lady is doing what is best for her in terms of her finances. The husband has already cheated and showed that he doesn't give a duck about the lady. Why shouldn't the lady take the best route that will save her money? Why should she give consideration to this man when he didn't to her? Even if you want to call her an asshole, which I won't because she is simply doing what needs to be done so that she is best off considering the situation, she would be a justified asshole. Because based upon the story, she didn't just protect her money. She was vindictive and worked to make sure he was fired and so totally financially dependent upon her. I've been in various shelters a few times for work, reviewing documents and whatnot. Making someone choose between being financially destitute/homeless, or else living with someone else who calls all the shots, was often presented by those organizations as a hallmark of an abusive relationship. It was why many of the women/kids were in the shelters, they had nowhere else to go. So I guess I'm just being sensitive here as I see this woman's actions being similar. He could just get a different job and divorce her. But that was a beautifully empathetic response. You're a good person. Lamau. Just get a ducking job could be leveled against anyone in a shelter. Reality, at least in the short term, is that it's often more complicated than that. Because based upon the story, she didn't just protect her money. She was vindictive and worked to make sure he was fired and so totally financially dependent upon her. Sounds like part of her strategy. Corner him until he goes for the divorce out of sheer frustration regardless of how penniless he might be. If he had been less cornered and relatively financially independent, he would have been less pressured to divorce and the wife would eventually have to initiate it herself, causing her to pay money to a cheater. The actions the wife took can definitely be considered abuse under ordinary circumstances. However, in this case, I won't call it abuse because she literally has no other option. It's like this, killing someone is called murder under ordinary circumstances, but when you do it to prevent being killed yourself, it would count as self-defense. Of course she has a choice in how she treats him. Sure, she could choose to reward him financially for using her money to cheat on her. We hope you have enjoyed today's episode. Please comment, like and subscribe. Cheers. Have a wonderful day or night. Wherever you are.